Hi, I'm Wanda from Alanda Craft, and today I'm going to show you how to make these triangle table runners. They look great. You can make them in a variety of fabrics to suit your decor and just what you like. I like them in these really flash funky colours. Let's get started and show you how to make them. Okay, so what you're going to need are 22 triangles. Now these are 60-degree triangles, and we've done a recent video on how to cut and sew triangles, so don't forget to check that out. Now of your 22 you're going to want 8 in one colour, and then you'll have 2 other colours and you want 7 of each of those. Now you want 3 strips that measure a 1 inch across the width of the fabric, so make sure you cut them straight across at 1 inch, and then you want 3 strips that are also across the width of the fabric, and they are 2 inches. Then you're going to need some backing and some batting. So the next thing is to lay your triangles out in the pattern that you want. I've done mine in lots of 3 repeating, as you can see here. Okay, and what we need to do before we do anything else is just to remove the 2 from each end. We're not going to sew those just yet. We'll put them aside and we'll do them later. So now we need to assemble these 2 rows, and what I'm going to do is just take the first triangle, lay it over the second one, and I'll go and sew that with a 1/4 inch seam. So you can see that I've sewn my 2 triangles together, and now I'm going to attach the third one. So I just lay it over the top of the middle one there, and I'm just going to sew down there with a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, so I've sewn that onto the other 2 triangles, so I have my block of 3, and I've done that with all of the rest of the triangles as well. I've sewn them in blocks of 3. So now it's time to join each row, so I'm going to take this row, lay it over here, and I'll sew that together, and then I'll come back and I'll do the same with the end set of 3, and I'll do exactly the same with the bottom row, sewing them together into one row. Okay, so I've sewn my 2 strips together, as you can see here on the table, and what I've done is I've pressed them. So on one strip I've pressed them all to one side, all the seams, and on the other I've pressed them all the opposite way. Now the reason I've done that is so that when we join it together it'll be nicely matched. Now what we're going to do next is add our sashing strip. Now you'll notice we've still got these 4 blocks here that we've done nothing, the 2 on each end. We've done nothing with those, and we're still not working with those as yet. What we're going to do is take one of our long strips and take our sashing. I'm just going to lay it right sides together, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave about 1 inch overhang on each end. So we'll do that with both of these strips. Got the other one here, and again we'll leave about 1 inch overhang, and I'll show you why shortly. So now what we're going to do, you can see that I've put the strips onto the sashing onto the long strips. Now we're just going to trim them up. So take your little ruler, or take your ruler, and make sure you line it up against the edge of your last triangle, so that you have that angle coming all the way through. And then you're just going to cut that off. And you're going to do that on all 4 of the edges, so that your black sashing strip is flush with your last triangle. Okay, so the next step is to do our end pieces, and we're going to just take one of them, take a piece of the sashing, lay it down. We've got plenty of room here. This was just an offcut from one of the long pieces, and we're going to sew that with a 1/4 inch seam. Going to do that exact same process with the other one, and then we'll do it with the other's end as well. So all 4 of our single pieces will have a piece of sashing attached. So as you can see, we have the sashing sewn onto our individual pieces, and we're going to do the same thing again to trim them. So I'll line my ruler up along the edge and cut it on the angle, just like that on both sides, and you'll end up, and all 4 of them will look like this. So you should be at this point now where we have our long strips with our sashing on, and we also have our 4 individual triangles with the sashing attached as well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add the border. So again, you want to have an overhang. We're just going to take our border strip and lay it along our sashing on one of our strips. Now you need to leave about a good 1.5 inches, because what we're going to be doing is when that's sewn on and we open it, again we're going to be trimming down. So you can see you need to leave a good 1.5 inches to do that. So leave 1.5 inches at each end, sew your border onto each strip, and then we're also going to sew the borders again onto our individual strips. So we have some smaller pieces here, and we'll just lay them along the sashing, sew them with a 1/4 inch seam, fold them out, and again trim it across on an angle. Okay, so now before we go any further, I'll just show you how these have been pressed. Alright then, so on the 2 long strips, I've pressed the border and the sashing strip seams towards the outside edge. But on the individual triangles, we've pressed the seams towards the pointy edge of the triangle. So what we're going to do now is attach the 2 end triangles to our long strips. So again, just right sides together and sew with a 1/4 inch seam, and we'll do exactly the same on the other end. And we'll repeat this process with the other strip. So we're on the homeward stretch now. What we're going to do is we're going to sew our 2 long strips together as we have everything all joined, all our individual triangles are joined onto our long strips. So we'll just take one and lay it face down on top of the other, and we're going to take some time and match these points up and pin them and sew with a 1/4 inch seam all the way down there. Okay, so now we've finished the top and it's looking really good, isn't it? So what we need to do now is to add our batting and our backing. Now, if you're going to quilt it in the usual fashion, then you'll want to cut your batting and backing how you normally would. But we're going to use the turn-through method. So we lay our top onto the batting and we cut around so that it's the same size. And we do the same with the batting. So we use this as our template. So I have my 3 pieces now, and in my sandwich I have my batting, I have my top on top of the batting, and that's face up, and then I have my backing, and that's face down over the top. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sew all 3 pieces together. So we'll start on the side here, and we'll start with a back stitch because we want to leave an opening to turn our runner through. So we'll start here with a back stitch and go all the way around, pivot at any corners that you come to, and using a 1/4 inch seam we'll go all the way around the runner, and then when we get back to about here we'll do another back stitch, and as I say, we're going to leave that as an opening. Okay, so I've sewn it all together with a 1/4 inch seam. Now I did say before to pivot at the corners, but you can just go straight off the end if you wish, which is what I ended up doing. I've gone all the way around and gone off at each corner, and then I've left a nice wide opening here. Now, I do recommend that you use a walking foot if you have one, because this is a little bit bulky when you're sewing it. So what we'll do before we turn it through, although you can turn it through to make sure you've caught everything, it sometimes pays to do that, but I've actually already done that, is I will just cut across the corner, making sure I don't clip my stitching, and then I'll just also cut on an angle to take away some of that bulk at the very edge there. So I'll go and do that now to all my corners and turn it through. So I've clipped the corners and now I'm going to turn it through. And this is always the exciting part when you're making anything. It always looks good when you turn it through and get to those final stages. I've left a nice big opening this time. Actually, you don't leave one quite as big as I did, but it doesn't matter. And when you're pushing out your corners, you can use the end of your scissors, but just be very careful because you don't want to go through the material and end up making a hole in the runner. So it's coming together quite nicely. I think the colours have gone together well. Okay, righto, so I'll give that a good tidy up and a press in a moment. Right, so as I say, I'll push out those corners so that they're nice and pointy, and then we'll do an iron so that we can make it nice and flat. So there we are, it's just about finished. What I'm going to do now is do a top stitch all the way around the edge, and that'll catch in that open seam. So it'll end up looking like this one here. So you can see where I've top stitched around the edge, and then I've done some linear quilting on here, and I'm thinking I'll do the same thing on that one because I quite like this, and the way it finishes on the back, it looks quite good. Nothing too flash, but it just suits the this runner, I think. So that's how we'll finish it off. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget that the full written instructions are over on our website at alandacraft.com.